I want it, so I'm going to take it. On today's Unnamed Real Estate Podcast. It's rabbits. Rabbits all the way down. My name is Ray Dawson, and this is the Unnamed Real Estate Podcast, episode 57. I am associate broker and sales manager for ProStar Realty, and I had a nice, tight, concise plan for today, and then I started clicking links, and next thing you know, things just blow up. One of the problems with history is that there's so much of it, and once you scratch the surface, you realize it just keeps going and going. My original concept of this episode was going to be discussing the right of conquest, which was an actual legal way to take title of property. You go, you kill the people who are on the property, bam, it's yours, right? It's that original, see, want, take, have. This is the way things were for quite some time. And unfortunately, we got a couple world leaders right now who seem to think that the old ways are the good ways. And that was going to kick off this episode. Now, we are living in historic times right now, and history just keeps going whether or not you want it to or not. And I really thought, and it's just like a running joke, it's like, why do you have that? Right of conquest. I took it, it's Viking ancestors, yar. So I thought that would be a fun topical episode, because the concept of right of conquest was originally a legal means of taking property. All right. If you were a country, if you were a nation state, if you were a set of plucky rebels out there, or a small culture in a part of a larger culture, you could secede from that larger culture, claim independence, start your own country and whatnot. This all ended right after World War II, the last big time somebody tried to exercise the right of conquest. And the losers, lost, and the winners got to write the new rules. And everybody got together in 1945 under the UN Charter, and they put in their chapter 2, or let's see, it's chapter 2, paragraph 4, basically says, don't take other people's stuff. Now, that didn't end war, obviously. Ever since then, we've had continuing wars happen from that point. But prior to 1945, your right of conquest would be solidified by a peace treaty signed by you and the person that you just went to war with. And the peace treaty would clearly delineate whose land is now whose land. Right? This has legal bearing. Right. Here in the state of Arizona, if you own land in Arizona, all right, your title, right, in the big chain of title, all right, goes back, all right, to the results of the Mexican-American War. And so that being said, I thought it'd be really cool to start looking into that, and that's where the rabbits started happening. Right? Because first I started researching, right of conquest, the legality of that, how that started getting going. And I came in here at 8 o'clock this morning, tried to get this thing knocked out early because I got stuff going on this afternoon. It is 10:35 and I just started recording. Right? I have been doing nothing but researching this thing, taking out slides and everything. And I haven't even gotten to the 1600s yet for Arizona. All right. I just keep finding more and more back there to go through. Right. So, focusing scope, hopefully focusing the rest of this conversation. All right, we're going to keep it a little bit tighter. All right, we've covered the right of conquest. We covered that used to be a legal term recognized by nations. All right, and whether or not the losing nation would truly recognize it, or the people of the ruling nation would recognize it, the government of that, the government of the ruling or the losing nation would recognize it formally in these peace treaties. Since then, we've had more countries shattering into smaller groups, like what we saw in Yugoslavia. What used to be one unified country has now turned into multiple little countries. You got Croatia, Bosnia, Herzegovina, Kosovo, Serbia. I probably missed one or two running around in there. And there's probably at least one or two little groups in there who think they should be their own country. but they're not. They're just a bunch of guys who live in this one particular river valley who have a claim going back on that particular river valley since, you know, the 900 ADs when they took it from somebody else, and it's theirs now, damn it. Incidentally, this is why Americans keep getting screwed up when we go to foreign wars, right? We think we go in there with a real 21st century mindset because we are a relatively young country. We can't even conceive of a grudge going back 1,200 years, you know, 1,100 years. For a lot of the world, it's still like that, right? And it's these issues that keep coming up over and over again, like what's going on in Russia and Ukraine right now. A whole bunch of people don't realize that Ukraine wasn't even a real country, right, until some time ago. Right. Formerly, you could almost make an argument there that they weren't even a real country until like 1992 or something like that, right? Before then, they had always been a part of another larger country, either Russia, the Empire, all right, the Soviet Union, the Empire, Lithuania, Poland, the Empire of Lithuania, Poland. I mean, you know, even those have had countries before, and it's fascinating. Like I say, this is how rabbit holes happen. This is how you just get sucked in. You lose a half a day clicking on links or watching the videos and watching the next videos. Right? But bringing it back, we live here in Arizona. I'm going to try to keep the rest of this focus on what's going on in Arizona. So to realize how you got, you know, ownership of lot 32 of Lincoln Heights Estates, or whatever the legal description is of your property that you currently own, or your lease ownership of apartment 12 of Sunnydale Estates, all right, all boils back, all right, into the past. So American history is really inadequate. Most people can tell you more about Alfred the Great, right, than they can tell you about what was happening in Arizona at the same time as Alfred the Great. All right. Part of that is because, you know, people who were living here at the time didn't have any written records that survived to this time. A lot of it is just cultural chauvinism of we are incredibly Euro-focused when it comes to history in this country. And a lot of it is there wasn't a lot of interesting things happening from his history standpoint. I mean, if you only got a year to teach a class in history, you want to hit the highlights. You want to hit the cool stuff, you know, the wars, the battles, the discoveries, the inventions, you know, that kind of thing, the religious uprisings. And I'm not saying that the entire North American continent didn't have any of these things, right? It's just that it wasn't really written down, and it wasn't written down in the languages that the people who were writing history books at the time when they first started putting together history books was paying any attention to. So when you start, as I was doing on this, trying to go backwards, right, and discover things. I mean, you know, you're sitting there dazing off in your junior high school history class, and it's like there was nothing going on in North America until Christopher Columbus hit. A lot of the Arizona history that I'm reading up on this thing in the short period of time that I dedicated to this, it is like nothing is reported or recorded at that first easy to scan, easy to Google layer, you know, between Christopher Columbus, Cortez, right? Cortez conquers Mexico. Right. Everybody here hears Arizona used to be part of Mexico. It's like, yeah, technically we used to be part of Mexico, but before that we were part of a country called New Spain. All right. And so, this all being said, I think this sounds like a really, really fun series of videos. All right. Now, for you guys who don't geek out on history like I do, you'll probably consider this as about as uplifting and as exciting as when I reviewed the entire contract last year. All right. But I think this might be my New Year theme here, is that we're going to be going over the history of Arizona. All right. And strangely enough, this whole thing got kicked off by, you know, Russia and the Ukraine, which actually started happening right about this time last week. And that's one of the interesting things about this whole thing, is that I'm recording this Thursday morning right now. And I haven't checked the internets in the last, hour and a half, or the news internets in the last hour. I have no idea what's going on right now. Kyiv could be a nuclear wasteland for all I know. It's really interesting. There's this great quote that says that, some decades will feel like days and nothing happens, and some days will feel like decades. All right, and we're definitely in one of those, these days are feeling like decades right now. At least the last two has, I think. So, that being said, I got a lot of research. It's very, very spotty, but let's hit the highlights and let's see how far I can start going ahead on these things. So, history happened before where we're picking up on there, but these are the three cultures that were in most of Arizona, right? Going back to what they call the Archaic period. Historians do. Right? And the Archaic period is basically in North America. Archaic is when people actually started stopping their hunter-gatherer nomadic lifestyles and started actually making settlements. Right? We have settlements that go back to 300 BC. In the Arizona region. We have cultures here that go back that far. We can find their records, we can find their sites, we can find their pottery and everything like that. And the big three up there, and little asterisks on this entire thing, I'm going to be trying to say a lot of words and languages I'm not a native speaker of, and I will butcher pronunciations, and we haven't even gotten to some of these Spanish names. All right, but the three main groups that were running around here were the ancestral Pueblo up on the northern side of the state, the Hohokam, which is down here in the Phoenix area, going centered around Casa Grande, which is that little town down south you drive through on the way to Tucson, and then the Mogollon people. And the Mogollon people were up to the Mogollon Rim, right, in the Gila, but also more to the southeast. These three cultures were well established. They that's the reason why we see the Pueblos. That's where Casa Grande, if you go down there, you're seeing a big adobe building. We also have some sites here in Phoenix proper that you can look up if you wanted to check them out. These were the three cultures that were going on. And it's funny because as I'm researching these things, all three of these cultures, for some reason, they're saying like 1450, they just ended. All right. And it's like from 300 BC to 1450, these were the cultures. And I'm trying to figure out what happens after 1450, right? I got limited time to get this video out, It's like right? Because the next little bit of news you get, right? And this is where it gets fun. We get this little dead space, all right? These were the cultures that were here before. Now, if you noticed, these three names, Hohokam, the Pueblo, and the Mogollon, these names mostly because the Mogollon Rim is named after the Mogollon people, all right? The Hohokam, is an actual tribe that's still here, right? But later on, we start hearing the other game, Navajo, Apache, Zuni, those names. I'm pretty sure they migrated in. I don't know why they migrated in. It seems like there's a really big part of Western history of the Western states. And if you grow up in the West, all right, you're always knowing about the local native tribe, all right? When I was growing up in Billings, Montana, it was the Crow, all right? And in Utah, you had the Utes, which gave the state the name, the Paiutes, all right? To the north, you had the Blackfeet. And it's really funny because, you always, if you ever talk about any Indian, Native American, about any of the other tribes, it's usually, yeah, those guys are assholes. And I don't know what the Paiutes called the Blackfeet in the Paiute native language, but I'm pretty sure it was those assholes. and continuing on. But you hear about these different tribes, and these tribes were in a constant state of flux, especially after the white guys showed up. Right? The Sioux Indians, right, of the northern plains came out of Minnesota. And they're in this constant state of moving around and whatnot. So when we sit there and we're looking at these three tribes, right, these are the these are not necessarily the tribes that the Spanish conquistadors are interacting with, right? Because now we got new names coming. We got names like Hopi, all right? So let's move on with that, and I'll explain a little bit. So the Coronado expedition, all right? Damn, now I got to go back in time even farther. All right, how'd the Spanish get here? Once upon a time, there was a pope. Yeah, it all starts with religion at this point. All right, 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. All right, Columbus discovers the New World. All right. Yes, there's some talk saying, hey, first he thought he hit China and stuff like that, or maybe wound up in the Japans, wound up, over there. But he found this islands out there, the Caribbean, and it wasn't until later people came along where they actually realized they discovered a continent. Right? One of the major impacts on the Southwest, which nobody ever knows about, was a Catholic pope called Pope Alexander VI. Right, Pope Alexander VI, in 1493, made a proclamation. Right, they're called papal bulls, and I will link to the show notes below where I got this information. This papal bull basically split the New World in two. Right, between the Spanish and the Portuguese. Right, and there's this little island change off the coast of Portugal called the Azores. And so what the Pope did to encourage, Portugal and Spain to settle and colonize the New Worlds is he basically went there and it's like, hey, these lands are yours to rule in a great Christian way. Go forth, spread the gospel, and if you make the money a little money on the side, yeah, how's that going to hurt? And he gave these two countries carte blanche to go out there and colonize the rest of the world. Spain got the west side of the Azores. All right. Portugal got everything to eat. So that basically gave Portugal Africa and gave Spain the New World. Now, because of where the Azores at on the globe, there's a little slice of South America down there that actually fell in the Portuguese hands, right? That's why Brazil happened, is why they speak Portuguese in Brazil and not Spanish. But we're talking about the Spanish side because the Spanish kicked in, and after a few years of running around the Caribbean, they kept hearing about this continent over there, and they kept hearing about this Aztec Empire. Right. So, a gentleman named Cortez goes in there. Interesting side note, he didn't actually have marching orders to take over Mexico. He just did it. A little bit of what ambition will do for you. So, Cortez goes in and conquers Mexico. All right, he conquers the Aztec Empire. He basically landed and was talking to the various tribes, and the various tribes really, really hated the Aztecs. And he said, hey, why don't we take those guys out? We've got guns, you got people, let's go do it. And so everybody, the history books were always saying about how Cortez landed with 500 conquistadors and blasted their way through the halls of Montezuma. But actually what it really was is that he incited and led a uprising of subjugated Indian tribes that were being subjugated by the Aztec people, right? And they were quite happy to overthrow those assholes over there for, with the help of these new assholes over here. That's how that, whole thing kicks off. So Spain starts colonizing Mexico. They start moving, colonists into Mexico. They start creating mining and industry and and enslaving people and having a grand old time. And there's a gentleman, rumors started going on about what was to this great expanse of land to the north and to the west, right? They had an inkling that there's some sort of, the continuation of the Pacific Ocean needs to be over there somewhere. All right. We know the Pacific's got to be out there somewhere. All right. So you got one set of explorers working their way around the coastline to figure out what's going on over there. All right. Another set of ones that kick off was, I'm trying to check my notes here because I found this really cool name and I threw it in. I was going to throw it in the notes and I didn't really put it. Wasn't Cortez? We already covered him. Anyways. Oh, Marcos de Niza. You probably never heard of this guy. Marcos de Niza was the guy who heard the original 7 Cities of Gold statement. He explored into southern New Mexico. All right. Got one of his buddies wiped out. These Spanish explorers, they're they're not doing the Lewis and Clark thing. There's not just two guys and a bunch of backbearers, trucking across the wilderness. These guys were doing like little mini campaigns. So they split off, this gentleman, Marcos Deniza, 1539, sends off a little expedition. Hey, see what's up that river line. And one of his buddies gets died over there. And so he goes to check out to see what happens. And he sees this big pueblo, right, on the hill. And it's huge, much bigger than he was expecting to see. And he knew that he just lost his buddy there. So he's like, okay, we need to bug out. So he goes hightailing it back to Mexico City. Gets back to Mexico City and says, okay, well, tell you what, there's a lot of bad guys up there. They just killed Bob. All right. And what I saw before I ran away was this shining city of gold up there. So that happened in 1521. And a lot of people didn't think anything of it. It was because of, at this time, other pressure from other European countries who were all doing the big land grab on the North American continent. Like the big land grab that happened later on in Africa. That it was explore it, plant a flag on it, it's yours. It's called the right of discovery, by the way. Right? Different topic, all right? We're dealing with right of conquest here. They were planting flags right and left all over the place. Right around this time period, and I should have wrote this down, Sir Francis Drake, right? English sea dog, all right? First Englishman to circumnavigate after Magellan, all right? He actually found the San Francisco Bay Area. Right? And because he discovered the San Francisco Bay Area and claimed it for England, right? That got the Spanish people, and now what's being called the state of New Spain, all right, to get really, really interested in what's going on, all right, to the northwest, right, and that's where the big Coronado expedition kicks off in. Now, the Coronado expedition here actually wound up in Kansas. Now, every time you see one of these maps, you're going to see little red lines going across, right? They didn't have the modern mapping systems that we have now. It's not like, Coronado could sit there, pull out his GPS, drop a pin, and know exactly where he's been. So he's describing what he's seeing. It doesn't look like that he had brought any navigational aids with him, because at least he could have gotten his north-south locations. So he's describing the land as hey, yeah, we went up this river, all right, it flowed north for 50 miles, and then we turned, right and went up this fork. So modern day historians have to look at maps and try to find a river that goes up 50 miles north, and oh, he must have been on this river right here, right? But it's pretty much, considered by most historians that he came up through the western or the eastern part of Arizona. Right, and as you can see here on the map, he proceeds up the eastern part of Arizona, just crosses over the New Mexico border, and then he sent one of his buddies over, and another name I did not write down that I should have. And this guy went over here, and he basically conquered the Hopi. All right, something along the lines of came up on a little village and whatnot. Words were said, rocks were thrown, guns were shot, There's a little mini Hopi massacre that happened there. But then peace reigned, and the other 5 Hopi tribes came up and said, whoa, dude, what the hell happened? And, this guy here, and I can't read his name right there on the map right now, but he basically says, hey, I'm here with Spain. You're part of Spain now. I need you to swear fealty to the king of Spain. They said, yeah, we swear loyalty to this guy we've never heard of before, and are you leaving now? And he left. But it was this little spur, the Coronado expedition, was part of what solidified Spain's claim, right, to why Arizona was part theirs. He is the same guy who discovered the Grand Canyon. This is like the major exploration that's going on. And then the rest of the Coronado expedition goes all the way over here into the Kansas area. All right. And then he works his way all the way back. Right? That's the major exploration that cemented Spain's claim to this area, this expedition. Now, over here on the West Coast, I think we had other guys going up there, but that's California. We don't really care about that, except how it influenced our history here. So, like I said, we got a big gray spot that's going on here. What happens between these guys, and this? Right. It's only 100 years or so. But if you notice, as these guys are going through, all right, they're already interacting with the Apache. All right, they're already interacting with the Navajo. I am not sure if the ancestral Pueblo people did not turn into the Navajo. In a lot of cases, you know, it's you'll have the same language group being used by multiple different tribes. All right, and those language groups are how modern day historians used to clump groups together. So, like I said, this is much more of a rabbit hole than I ever thought it would be. I just wanted to talk about people killing other people and taking their land. And that is history in itself, and history goes back forever. So I'm going to continue on with this, right? We're going to leave it right here with Cortez. Coronado. I keep saying Cortez. Coronado in his original expedition, right? Because Arizona, after that, is not going to be as strongly colonized. You're not going to have waves of immigrants coming in during this time period, coming up from Mexico. We do have some, right? And what we do have is we have a lot of missionaries showing up, and they're starting missions. And then we also have the Spanish military, or still Spanish military at the time, coming in to defend those missions. Right? This is where true Spanish influence starts hitting Arizona. We're going to cover that in a later episode and whatnot, because I could keep researching, keep going on all day, but we're already 26 minutes into this, and we still got to do the numbers, because the numbers are still being numbers. This is our history right here. All right. Our actives right now are 4,364, down another 74. Right, of which we had 2,336 new listings come on the market this week, right, which is up 78. We're still increasing new listings, and we're still seeing less on the market. Why? Because our pendings are at 2,172, which is up 181 from the week before. Under contracts looking for backups are 1,181, which is up 36, and our contracts with the buyer contingency are 91, up 19. We're up across the board in everything except for actives, because demand is still exceeding our supply. Closings last week, end of the month closings were 3,167, which was up 1,100 from the week before. And our coming soons are up too. We're at 1,083. So that's the end of this week. I need to get going. We are having a office social event today kicking off, and so I need to get this thing edited in the can and uploaded, so you guys will be seeing it at 5 o'clock tonight. Next week, short of nuclear war, anything else that might come is going to bump it up. I'm going to try to continue researching a little bit more the Spanish colonization of Arizona. If there's anybody out there who has a point of reference who could really break down the Indian cultures before the Spanish come in and screw everything up, I'd really like to see that. Maybe a reference that I could link in the show notes below. Like I said, I got big black holes in my understanding of the world, right? And one of these big black holes is basically the Aboriginal, Native American tribes, whatever you want to call them, the First Peoples, if you're Canadian, people who were living here before Coronado, and that group of assholes showed up. So thank you very much. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you guys all next week.